Edward Gow has been a student at St. Stephen's for the past 10 years. During his time here, he has been a part of the academic team, president of the math club, the Latin club treasurer, part of the National Honor Society, part of the mycology club, and he is a pork rind fanatic. Please welcome Edward.
Yeah. Is it on right now? Oh. All right. How many times have you seen someone go up on that podium and the first words you hear from them are a well-known fact about themselves or an inspirational quote or when I was thinking about how to write my senior speech? How many times have you heard a speech end with a revelation they had or a general life lesson or crying? Our actions often tend to fall into cliches, and senior speeches are no exception. That's why you don't try to memorize your speech. Mine is no different, honestly, from being a cliche. But, oh my gosh. In fact, some of the ones that have had those attributes I just mentioned, ironically, were meant to send a message about being yourself. And mine is no different from being one of those. One of the things that we're always told as students is how to not be a cliche, because it's one of the most important pieces of advice that an adult can give someone. And it's for a good reason. This is a list of the 5 most common deathbed regrets. It's no surprise what number 1 is. But the thing is, truly being yourself is pretty difficult. And I'll bet that even if you ask those same people whether or not they'd want to have lived a different life overall, or even swap it for someone else's, very few, if any of them, would say yes. Probably none of them would say yes, but as Mr. Unelli always says, you can't use absolute statements. Regardless of how stereotypical your life may seem, it's still yours. It has your own nuances, and it's still unique in its own way. And so maybe the stigma around being a cliche isn't really justified. I may be personally biased in saying that, I'll admit. I mean, based off appearance alone, I fit nearly every stereotype you could think of about me. But it's deeper than that. Realistically, there's no way to be completely unique. You're always going to be following a pre-existing path to some degree, and you shouldn't necessarily try to fight that. When I first started high school, I wanted to be known as anything other than the guy that just got good grades all the time. And 4 years later, I can confidently say that I did not get what I wanted. However, I've grown to enjoy being in groups such as the academic team and the math club, and it was only through trying to break that initial image of myself that I realized how much the academic persona really suited me. This is something that can also be applied to lifelong passions. Even if you don't think something is personalized or fulfilling enough for you, you have to give everything a chance. This is something I experienced when I learned piano. I technically started when I was around 4 years old, taking lessons, but back then I had zero interest in playing because I was basically forced into it, and that combined with average kindergarten behavior led to me being a horrible student, both in performance and for my teacher to deal with. However, In ninth grade, I revisited piano, actually wanting to play songs that I liked. And despite my past difficulties, my newfound desire to learn allowed me to redevelop a previously cut off activity. Had I kept taking the advice to only do what I really want to do from when I was 4 years old all the way up to when I was in ninth grade, it's likely that my piano passion would have stayed buried for years to come. On a final note, there's a strategy that's often touted around for getting into college that I think pretty accurately sums up the dilemma that us high schoolers are in when it comes to finding passions. It states that it's better to have a spike or a focused area of interest that you spend a lot of time on during high school, rather than be a well-rounded student who's decent at a lot of things but not particularly good at anything. And it's not a bad strategy, but the problem with it is that we don't know what our passions are yet. So the process that us high schoolers should generally follow, and especially 9th and 10th graders, is to act like a well-rounded student initially in order to explore every possible subject, try every possible thing, in order to narrow down the things we're good at and are interested in and will eventually pursue as a spike. Ultimately, we're all too young to know what really makes us happy, and the only way to learn is through experience. So the next time that you find yourself falling into a mold or taking an overwalked path, don't stress it, and instead ask yourself, is my life so formulaic right now that I choose to swap my life for someone else's? Above all else, make sure the answer to that question stays no, and make sure that if you have any regrets when you're on your deathbed, they exist because you tried too many things and not because you didn't try enough. Now, I'd like to thank some people to round out this disaster of a speech. I'd like to thank 3 of my teachers in particular, those being Mr. Hoonhout, Mrs. Bulletin, and Mr. Carlson. Hoon, I know that at some point in the last 3 years, you've thought that I hated you. And I'm here to tell you today that that's never been the case. You're a key part of our advisory's bond and a great advisor in general, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise, especially not Reese. Mrs. Bulletin, thank you for being a teacher who's willing to say we're wrong when we deserve it. I think the world needs more teachers like you. And I'm sorry that I've gotten a lot more difficult this year, but I think I'm just getting tired of math, which I know is uncharacteristic of me for multiple reasons. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Carlson, where is he? He's right there. Or as we in AP Physics like to call you, Master Carlson. You're the greatest physics teacher I've ever had, as well as the only physics teacher I've ever had. But technicalities aside, I've only ever had 3 teachers in high school who have truly intimidated me with the amount of knowledge they possess, and you are absolutely one of them. I don't know of anyone else who could teach a class as miserable as AP Physics in a way that makes it only mildly unpleasant. And of course, no thanks to my friends, because without you guys, I'd have one less reason to show up here every day. But pretty much everyone in these rows, Theo, Madeline, Evie, Madison, Patrick, Isabella, Sam, Jaden, Sanjay, Arthur, sorry. You guys make every day just a little bit more bearable, and I thank you guys for it. And of course, I have to give a special shout out to Theo. I know you requested that 3 minutes of my speech be dedicated to you, but you'll have to settle for 20 seconds. I don't think it's a stretch to say that we kind of owe each other our academic careers. For literally a decade now, we've pushed each other to try harder in school than we would have otherwise, and I think it's paid off for both of us. I just hope that when I get to college, I can find another Theo to keep me motivated, as you have in high school. And finally, to my junior friends, Hal, Dylan, Cameron, and Cooper. Be ready for senioritis. Don't fall off like I did. And Cooper, go to class. Thank you all, and for the final time, peace out.
Yeah.